we traveled to the Holy Land to scratch the surface of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and try to understand the reality of Palestinian refugees, the fountainhead in some ways of our contemporary global migration crisis. Built during the Second Intifada in the 2000s, the Israeli West Bank wall imprisons Palestinian people within their own land, restricting their movement and existence under the justification of security claims. A wall is a barrier. The Israeli wall is a barrier that segregates, confines, and divides. It carries a message. It screams subjugation. It tells Palestinian people they're all threats, terrorists, untrustworthy, unhuman. Those confined within the boundaries of the wall are constantly watched. They are under observation and surveillance. In the Holy Land, I felt the paradoxes of oppression, occupation, and persecution. I felt the dryness of a land deserted of compassion and understanding. In the West Bank, we met a family whose house had been brutally flattened by the Israeli state. Since the late 1960s, the Israeli state has demolished more than 50,000 houses in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza.
In the middle of May, this guy was get married and live in this house. 1 week after he get married, he was in the honeymoon. He hears the bulldozer coming in night. It's the neighbor. And he was the mother and his wife, in the honeymoon, 1 week, just married. And he built the house, and he now with his wife need to build the family under the one roof. And he feel like dignity. Just 1 week, he don't feel it. They came to bulldozer. Demolish 4 houses in Al-Walaja. This is the first one, and go down, demolish 3 more houses, big building. This was very special, beautiful, beautiful house. It's not a human. It's not, I can't believe. We need just from the world one thing. We don't need the world to send to us as Palestinian weapons to go kill the Jews, throw them in the sea, like what they lie in the media, and to feed the fish. It's not what we need. You know what we need? I have 6 children. I wish, I pray for God. Just I stop the suffering in my children generation. You know why? Because from my grandfather, I'm refugee. I'm from time of my grandfather having 48 suffering. In 67, my parents. In the first intifada, I'm arrested 8 times for no reason. Administrative of detention, secret file, no file, nothing. Just put me without reason. I have right as a father to stop the suffering in my children generation, to get just for our children good future. We don't need, what we need from the world? Just to following justice.
Not far from the demolition site, we visit the Aida refugee camp in Bethlehem. The camp was established in 1950 by Palestinian refugees from Jerusalem and Hebron, and around 60,000 people live there.
We are now, Bruna, in the refugee camp. I told you before, I came from refugees' parents. I am refugee, I said, but where I live, in my country, we are the only nations in the history of the life. We said, I'm refugee in my own country. In all the world, have refugees camp for the same citizen. But we are the only nations, or even also, have refugee camp, we see here, like Aida camp. We are in a refugee camp in Palestine, Palestinian refugees in a refugee camp in Palestine, in our own country. And it's never happened in the history of the life, except with Palestinians.
In the camp, the school gate was filled with holes left by the bullets shot by the Israeli soldiers. It's painful to imagine growing up in such a traumatic environment with fear and resentment. For Palestinian, olive trees have deep symbolic meaning. The trees are drought resistant and grow even in the poorest soil conditions. The land has some of the world's oldest olive trees, with thousands of years old, and they are passed down from family to family throughout generations. Olive trees are a main source of income for families in the West Bank and Gaza. They represent Palestinian strength, resistance, and resilience, and can teach us how to bear fruits in spite of their circumstances. Serving others is never about oneself, it's about the whole. The impulse to serve comes from the understanding that we all belong to an interconnected whole. We need to humanize the lived experiences of people forced to flee their homelands, of people living in extreme poverty, of people who are excluded in our societies. We share a common home, a borderless planet. We need stories that not only celebrate our interconnectedness and care for humanity, but also acknowledge the voices and contribution of those living in the landscapes of destitution. Refugees and migrants are human beings with great capacity to contribute to economic, social, and cultural development of societies. Multicultural and diverse societies are stronger and more resilient. What we need is humane and inclusive policies adapted to the reality of increasing human migration. Policies and programs which facilitate safe passage, guarantee human rights, access to opportunities, education, housing, and work for both host communities and newcomers.